Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Very good afternoon to everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sallallahu ala Muhammad. I start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and peace be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is Tirmizi Ashrafi from Association of Muslim Professionals, and I welcome you all in this wonderful session of employability training program. We have participants from JKM College, Chennai, and Amritsar Pharmacy College, Amritsar, Punjab. So I would now do a small presentation about AMP India Foundation. AMP India Foundation is a not-for-profit organization registered under Section 8 of Companies Act 2013, Government of India, for providing voluntary social services to meet the needs of underprivileged individuals, that is, upliftment of the underserved and needy through education and vocational training, employment support, medical relief, economic empowerment, student mentorship and guidance. Employment Assistance Cell, EAC. We all are witnessing AIF's success as one of the most admirable national level NGO striving for three E's: education, employment, and empowerment. Keeping in mind AIF's core objective of supporting the underprivileged, promoting education, and creating economic empowerment, AIF had launched a special project with the name of AIF Employment Assistance Cell. During its initial stages of formation, today it is one of the core projects of AIF. Our major EAC activities include job fairs, job drives, employability training programs in colleges, skill training company tie-ups, candidate mobilization, skill development courses. Job fairs. Job fair is one of the flagship projects of AIF, and we have successfully organized 43 job fairs till date. Every job fair has participation of minimum 50 companies and 2,000 plus candidates. AIF has organized job fairs in the past in collaboration with Thane Police, Aurangabad Police, West Bengal Minority Finance Development Corporation, Andhra Pradesh State Minorities Finance Corporation, and other reputed NGOs. These government NGOs collaborate with AIF as local partners and take care of the local ground promotions in the job fair arrangements. AIF invite corporates like TCS, Asian Paints, Reliance Group, Cafe Coffee Day, McDonald's, Teamlease, Tech Mahindra, and other reputed corporates in the job fairs. Job drives. Job drives are similar to job fairs but are organized on a much smaller scale compared to job fairs. In a job drive, we typically invite only up to 2 to 3 corporates who have specific openings and advertise their openings profiles in order to attract suitable candidates. Employability training programs. AIF's Employability Training Program, or ETP, has been developed to assist job seekers find the right job at the right place and at the right time, and to become the right fit in a present-day modern organization. Our ETP trainers are seasoned professionals who have in-depth understanding of employability training and committed to investing their valuable time, resources, and knowledge in grooming the candidates. Skill training company tie-ups and candidate mobilization. AIF has partnered with reputed skill training companies like Tata Trust, Whirlpool, Tech Mahindra Foundation, etc. We have also arranged skill training melas in Mumbai by inviting around 20 skill training companies to hire and train unskilled candidates who could not pursue their higher studies after 10th and 12th standard. Candidate mobilization. AIF has mobilized candidates for various skill development courses like AC technician, mobile repairing technician, and solar engineering under Skill India mission in centers all across India. Our achievements: 43 plus job fairs, 9 online job fairs, 275 plus job drives, 6 online job drives, 220 plus employability training programs, 24 online ETPs, 100 plus mock interviews in colleges, 25,000 plus candidates placed in jobs. We have organized 6 career fests and benefited 150,000 plus students. New initiative by AIF, empowerjobs.com, was launched on 6th December 2020. It's a unique job portal with comprehensive offerings introduced by AMP India Foundation for job seekers, especially those hit by COVID pandemic. Thank you very much. I would now introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Masood Patel. So, Mr. Masood Patel is a certified executive coach from Coaching Foundation of India. Mr. Masood has worked in the corporate sectors for about 20 years in organizations like Wipro, Tech Pacific, and CMS Computers. Starting as a frontline service professional, he rose to shoulder profit center head responsibilities. Today, he runs a boutique consultancy focusing on performance management. I would now introduce our expert speaker for today, Mr. Masood Patel, to please carry on the session from here. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, respected faculty and dear students. So let me just share my screen first. Just to give you, add to a certain, to the further background, what Mr. Ashrafi has shared with you. As part of my job, I have been heavily involved in, recruiting people at various levels. And we also have had the benefit of getting groomed on how to recruit right from the time of, shortlisting resumes to running interviews and running through the entire cycle per se. Today, my role, of course, is much more restricted in terms of, conducting only the final interviews for the candidates at the last leg. So I come with some kind of a background on how exactly recruitments are happening. So what I intend doing is, we will probably spend some time talking about what I need to share with you, and later on we'll have a small question and answer session where we will open up, we will address all the queries that you have, and please feel free to interact. Whatever you feel like, please put it on the chat, so that if I feel I want to accept that interrupt at that point of time, I may probably want to answer that question right away. Otherwise, I may keep it for a later part of the Q&A session. So, am I audible to the all the audience?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir. You are audible. You can continue, sir.
So, just to we all talk about employability, interviewing skills, etc. But let's have a reality check. Just to give a perspective, in the last 10 years, we had 240 million people who joined the working life. And so obviously one would expect that about 240 jobs should have got created. Unfortunately, if you look at the number of jobs created in the last 10 years, it's hardly a few million. So there is a huge chunk of people who have remained unemployed and have had to resort to probably self-employment and doing something on their own. Okay. Added to that is the fact that, only about 10% of the workforce in India is really employed in the organized sector. 90% of the workforce is in the unorganized sector. Okay. Now add to that one further dimension. If you look at the surveys done by TeamLease or McKinsey or NASSCOM, NASSCOM is the industry body of all the software exporters. McKinsey is an international consultancy organization. TeamLease is a famous Indian organization, and I think AMP has also partnered with them in the past. So all these companies have come out with surveys at various points of time, and all of them have come with a uniform conclusion that if you look at our professional colleges, okay, I'm not talking of the general arts, science, and commerce colleges, but if you look at the uh, uh, professional colleges like engineering, management, etc., typically it's only about 15% of the students who are employable, which means 85% of the students need to do a lot of work before they can become employed. So obviously, this is a situation which has been hitting the students pretty bad, and obviously they are not sitting tight. They have also been doing a lot of their own preparation. So just to give you a perspective, we are talking of an employability training, and we are talking of a 1 hour session. Compare that with what my daughter is undergoing right now. She is in the third year of engineering, and she had a 1 semester program on employability, which was conducted by an external agency, for which she had to pay extra. Now, this typical program was 6 days a week, 2 hours per day. Okay. And of course, it also covered programming to some extent, because being the engineering stream, you also require to do a lot of engineering and programming. So even if you leave aside that programming part of it, you still have about 3 days a week of rigorous training on how to appear for job interviews and how to go through a selection process. So obviously, if you are expecting this 1 hour session to compensate for that 1 semester activity, it is going to be, we are going to be living in a fool's paradise. So what I intend doing is to highlight to you the necessity of working on employability training, because typically what happens is most students assume that once they've completed their engineering education or their pharmacy education, they would be just waiting for the employers to come and start interviewing and start hiring them. Unfortunately, there's a long way to go before the employers can start hiring. There is actually a great dearth of qualified manpower. Employers are looking out for the right talent, but they are not able to find the right talent. Although we have a huge number of people, they are not suitably equipped to join the workforce. And that is where people like us need to make sure that we upscale ourselves to become employment ready. So what is happening? Now, if you have the funds at your disposal, you have a lot of external organizations like the Time, Campus Career, Campus Connect, etc. A whole lot of them who actually run a lot of programs for people who are graduates, who are passing out, and who are wanting to get into the job market. So they have their own commercialized programs available which help you to become job ready. But if you don't have the funds, it does not mean that you don't have any other option available. You have the wherewithal available thanks to the internet today. Today we have Google Baba, who's there, helping us with all his munificence. And so Google, if you look at the internet, there's a whole lot of information, a whole lot of literature available. All that it requires is a set of discipline, kind of a discipline for us to decide, okay, look, I need to focus on my employability skills and I need to start working on that. For people from the engineering stream, there are a lot of technical uh, programs like programming, etc., which are also available free of cost on platforms like edX. And people at our level should need to get into that habit of finding some time and spending our energies trying to understand what are the things that I need to take. How do I start looking out for a job? How do I start writing my resume? How do I start, let's say, appearing for the interview? How do I start getting into the work role? Okay, so there's a whole host of things available, and this is the time that you really have some time available despite the pressures of your in semester exams and end semester exams. If you look at it from a working man's purview, today you still have a lot of time available to spend on these kind of activities. Now, while you are working on it, I will strongly urge you to have a mentor in place. Now, a mentor is someone who will hold you to account. So he's a well-wisher of yours who will hold you to account if you are not doing what you've committed to do. So let's say you've decided to spend some time on surfing the internet, trying to understand what is it that you need to do to become more employable. Now, you will have your own timelines available that, by the end of this week, I shall be doing this. By the end of the next week, I shall do that. Okay. Now, this mentor is a person who will cross check with you whether you've achieved that or not. Because it's important that, we have someone who's holding us to account. If you don't have that mentor to account, it is always very easy to skip our commitments and, land up on the last day of the semester to figure out that, how start wondering how to address the interview panel. Okay. So any questions at this stage before we move further? Anyone has got any questions at this stage?
Right now, we don't have any questions, but if there would be any question, the participants would raise their hands.
Yeah.
No issues.
Because I'm not, I am not comfortable. I don't know whether people are understanding whatever I'm saying or am I making sense to them. So if I get some feedback, I know whether, it's making sense or not to them.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah. So let me, so I am not right now going to the slideshow mode. What it says is, your resume is your first view about yourself. So the amount of time one needs to spend on your resume has to be very high. Okay, right from the cover letter to the actual resume, one needs to spend a lot of time and energy trying to make sure that you are creating a good first impression on the employer. So how do you write your resume? Now there's a lot of material available on how to write a resume, and but there are certain things which I would want to share from my experience. So the first thing is, if you are talking of a resume cannot be a standard piece of paper which is shared with everybody. A resume has to be tailored for every specific employer differently. And so it is necessary that we understand ourselves first properly. Who am I? It's a very easy question, but unfortunately, most of us do not know ourselves so well that we are able to communicate our strengths and our weaknesses to the interviewer. So it is important that we start writing down about ourselves. The best thing I have experienced is to write down about yourself for about 20 pages about yourself. So you may start wondering, what am I going to write about 20 pages of myself? So you can write down everything right from your childhood till the present date, what has happened in your life, and how have you come out, interacted over there. How have you come out as a character in those incidents is what you can start writing down. Okay, whether they are relevant, irrelevant doesn't matter. What matters is that you are writing down, you're capturing it, so that when the time comes, you are able to pick out whatever is most relevant and which it put into the resume. Okay, so incidents from your life. Okay, I mean, what has that got to do with your working life? Yes, it has got everything to do with your working life. Okay, so incidents in your life, whether it is pertaining to academics, whether it is pertaining to the play field, whether it's pertaining to your relationships with friends, with people, with your relatives, what do you feel can make sense, which gives an idea about yourself. Okay, you can just put it down on the dossier on the 20-page write-up. Okay, you can also write down what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are are your strengths, what are are your weaknesses. Now, obviously, you will not know everything. Okay, so it is best to ask people around. You can ask your friends, you can ask your family members, you can ask your relatives, you can ask your classmates. What do they think about you? What do they want to portray to employers? And what do they want you to correct, if at all anything, so that you come out as a better person for the employer. So get inputs from all these people and write down, have a complete 20-page dossier on yourself. Okay. If you want to go still more professional, you can actually do a lot of psychometric tests. And a lot of these psychometric tests are available free of cost on the net. Okay. So those tests will tell you what kind of a person you are, what kind of job profiles will, make sense for you, and what are the profiles where you need to take a play a bit more cautiously. So all these things are available free of cost, which you can go on the net and find out. So once you get all this information, just put it down in that 20-page dossier, so that you are then ready to figure out what is it that you need to place in your resume. Okay. Now, before you write your resume, the first thing you need to understand is, for whom do you want to write your resume? If I want to apply for ICICI Bank, I can't be writing a resume for ICICI Bank and then later on realize that, okay, tomorrow there is an Infosys interview, so forward that same resume to Infosys. Okay. Uh, The resume for Infosys has to be totally different compared to the resume for ICICI Bank. Or for that matter, if you're talking of a resume for Infosys and you're writing a resume for TCS, the two resumes will be different, although they are from the same industry, the same kind of the same kind of uh, uh, job requirements. But then the resumes will have to be tweaked differently for the two organizations. TCS will expect a different kind of a resume. Infosys will expect a different kind of a resume. Okay. So it's necessary to understand for which organization you want to write a resume, which means you have to now start your job hunt. Okay. Now, where do you know which organization is looking out for jobs? Today, if you look at the advertisements that are coming out in the newspapers or anywhere else, you'll find hardly any ads are coming out for recruitments. That is because almost 60 to 70% of the jobs today are filled through references. They are no longer advertised. People prefer to hire through references for two reasons. One is, they save on costs. And number two, they know that if someone is giving a reference, the person would knows what the requirement of the organization is, and he would share resumes which are a profile suitable for that organization. So it is necessary that you are in touch with those kind of people who are having access to all these referral networks. So having a strong association with your friends, with your past students who are, I mean, your seniors who have passed out from the institute, they are working in organizations. Having a strong association with them helps. They would be the people who would pass on those requirements to you whenever they come across some opportunities. So once they come out with the opportunity, you know that there is an opportunity over here, and this organization wants to hire people. At that stage, you can start writing your resume for that particular organization. Uh, okay. Uh, so now, how do you write the resume? As I said, resume has to be tailored for the particular organization. Okay. Now, today a lot of resumes are actually screened not by the human resources department, but by artificial intelligence. So you have a bot available which screens resumes through mail and then automatically sorts out what are the resumes which are worth processing further, and which are the resumes which are not worth proceeding further. So if you look at a typical organization, getting about 100 applications for every job is not uncommon. Okay. So it's more likely that, if you have a good organization, you'll have about 500 resumes for every job that is posted. So your resume has to stand out amongst those 500 resumes as the resume which needs to be shortlisted for further processing. So if you look at the resume, you need to make sure that your resume reflects the same words which the job ad has got in its body. So let's say the job posting talks of something with specific requirement, something, let's say, career oriented. Okay. So your resume also should have words corresponding to that career resume in your resume, so that the bot is able to identify that this these words are matching the job posting, and hence I should be shortlisting this particular resume. Okay, so this is very necessary that we reflect the ad that is posted. The second thing is your resume cannot be more than a page long. One page is the normal is the expected length of the resume, and it should cover whatever is important about you as a candidate. Okay, now how to condense everything into one page is something that you have to start figuring out, in the sense where there's a lot of material available. How to write that resume, how to condense this 20 pages into one page. Okay, which specific aspect to pull out from that 20 pages and put into your resume. Okay, all those things, a lot of information is available, which you need to step forward and start looking out and start applying. In a worst case scenario, you may spill over one page, but then never more than 2 pages. Okay, the other thing that the resume should necessarily talk about is your story, but it is more of an advertisement than anything else. uh, how many people have seen an ad? You have all seen the ad, right? Does the ad contain every, let's say you have an ad for a motorcycle. Does the ad for the motorcycle contain all the features of the motorcycle in the ad? Can I get a quick response on the chat window? Say you have a Suzuki motorcycle or a TVS or a Hero motorcycle. Any ad of those, that motorcycle, does it have all the features mentioned in the ad? Essentially, if you look at any advertisement, the advertisement does not contain all the features of the product. It only contains something which is relevant to the audience. Okay, so if I recollect, when I was a teenager, there was an ad of Promise. Okay, it said long ke tel wala Promise toothpaste. Now, is there any toothpaste which does not have long ka tel? Every toothpaste contains clove oil, but this toothpaste decided to brand itself as the one with clove oil, and so it became its unique selling proposition. Okay, so what it said was, this toothpaste has got clove oil, and hence you should buy this toothpaste. Okay, that was its unique selling proposition. Likewise, we need to come out with our own unique selling proposition. What is it about us that, out of those 500 resumes, my resume should be the one shortlisted? Okay, so that is the kind of resume that one needs to write to be able to get shortlisted and be amongst the 50 resumes which are shortlisted out of the 500. Okay, so so focus on the benefit to the employer, not on what you are all about. Okay, yeah, and to help you achieve that, you need to talk about what are your achievements. Okay, typically when we are writing a resume, we tend to write about who we are. Okay, the employer is not interested in who you are. What he is more interested is in what you have achieved. Now you will say that, as a student, I have got nothing, no achievement to show. Well, you have a lot of achievement to show right from your childhood till now. Your achievement need not necessarily be at the workplace. Your achievement could be in the academic arena. Your achievement could be in the playfield. Your achievement could be in your at your family, where you helped your father, in his business, in his grocery shop or whatever. Okay, there's a lot of achievements one can talk about, even when you're talking about your personal life. So talk about the achievements and talk in terms of numbers. Okay, don't just talk about what I've done. I helped my father in my business. No, that does not help. I helped my father grow my daily sales from 1,000 rupees per day to 1,300 rupees per day, and that is what sets the alarm bells ringing for the interview, for the employer. He says, "Oh, this guy is one guy who's focused on numbers, who knows what he's talking about. So let me look at this person much more closely." Okay, so this is the kind of resume that one needs to write. Okay, so so once we are through with the resume, we then come to the next stage. And the next stage is the actual selection. Once you've got shortlisted, you are now in the campus. So campus recruitments typically are going to be multi-stage. It is not going to be a resume shortlisted and you are called for interview. You are going to be having to go through multiple assessments before you are actually called for the interview. So the first thing that will happen is you will have to undergo typically an aptitude test. Okay. Now an aptitude test figures out what is your sense of logic. Are you a person with logic or are you a person with intuition? It's not that, if you are a person with intuition, there's something wrong. No, certain jobs require people with intuition, certain jobs require people with logic. A job where you require intuition, if you have a logical person, he'll be the worst fit over there. So they will obviously not look at a person who's very logical in a place where you require people with intuition. So both have got its advantages, and so you will have aptitude tests which will try to figure out what are your strengths. Okay, and based on those results of those aptitude tests, you will then move on to the next stage. So how do you figure out how to assess master the aptitude tests? So again, a lot of tests available on the internet, and then of course you also have a lot of books available which cover aptitude tests. Okay, the cost it's not very costly. It may be worthwhile investing in a book and sharing it amongst friends, so that a lot of you are able to practice those aptitude tests and make yourself more comfortable with those aptitude tests. Okay, so if the aptitude tests, if you are shortlisted in the aptitude test again, if you're out of those 50 people who ran through the aptitude test, probably they will shortlist about 10 people for the interview, or maybe 20 people for the next stage, which is a group discussion. Maybe. Now I don't know. Not saying that all of these things will happen, but depending on the organization, depending on the number of people they want to hire, and depending on the number of candidates available, an employer could go through employ any of these tools. So after the aptitude test, you come into the group discussion stage. So at the group discussion stage, you have a typical topic to discuss with a group of your fellow classmates. Okay, and how you come out in that group discussion determines what kind of a person you are. Are you someone who's trying to drive results, or are you someone who's trying to drive teamwork, or are you someone who was just waiting to be told what to do, what not to do, or are you someone who's taking initiatives? Okay, all these things are determined at the group discussion level. So how do you prepare for the group discussions? To prepare for the group discussions, one needs to ensure that again, a lot of information available on the internet, a lot of books available. Okay, but then even if you don't want to invest in books, you can always go to the internet, and a lot of information is available. All it requires is for you to be willing to spend some time and your energy on building up your employability. Okay, so once you've gone through the group discussion phase, probably they would shortlist about 5 or 6 students out of that and come to the interview stage. Okay. Now, for those people who have not got shortlisted in their resume stage, in the aptitude stage, in the group discussion stage, it's important to understand that what has got rejected is not you, but your resume. It's not you who has got rejected, but the answers of your aptitude tests. So you are still very much a person who's capable enough. It's just that what is important is what the company was looking for is not what you have exhibited. Okay, it may be there, but you have not exhibited. Okay, and so that's the reason why you're not in that shortlist. It does not for any moment mean that you are not capable of that job or any such thing. It means nothing. It just means that what you have displayed is not what the company was expecting. Okay, you may be very much capable, but it's just that you have not displayed that. So you need to go back to the drawing stage and figure out what is it that you need to do to display the right kind of skills, that display the right kind of attitudes, approaches, etc. Okay, so this is what is typically the situation before you come to the group discussion before you come to the interview stage. So any questions at this stage? No questions. I will move to the next phase. The next phase is the interview itself. So how do you prepare for the interview? Okay, it's important. You will find a lot of material which says that these are the typical questions. This is what you need to answer. This is how you need to answer, etc. All that is fine. But first and foremost, I think what you need to do is stand in front of a mirror and start practicing in front of the mirror. That's the most important preparation required for you to be able to gain confidence. When you are speaking in front of the mirror, you are getting a feedback from that other person as to how the person in front of you is perceiving you. Okay, if you're are you being perceived as a confident person, or are you being perceived as a nervous individual? Okay, all that information is being fed back to you by the person behind the mirror. So it is necessary that you start practicing in front of the mirror. And what will you practice? You can practice what are typical questions are there. I mean, the typical questions which are there, which would be asked, and you will find a whole host of them, a whole inventory of questions available, and you can look at those questions and start answering those questions in front of the mirror. So how you come across answering those questions is what the you get to know from the guy in front of behind you, behind the mirror. Okay, and the same thing you can also apply for the group discussion part of it. Supposing you are discussing some topic for group discussions, how do how are you answering those questions in a group discussion? How you are making your point in a group discussion? Same thing you can practice in front of the mirror. Okay, and be ready. Okay. Now, the most important development over the last 1 year is that, while we had face-to-face interviews, over the last 1 year, everything has gone virtual. That means your resumes are getting shortlisted, your interviews are getting virtual, your assessment is getting virtual, your being appointed, your appointment is happening virtually, and you are also joining the organization virtually, and you're working also virtually. So you're all doing sitting at one place in your home. You're doing everything at the workplace. So this is something which is quite unusual for not only the newcomers but also for experienced people uh, who have been who spent their lives in the entire career. So there are certain important things that one needs to take care of when you're talking of a virtual or a remote interview. So the first thing is, you need to dress up like you would dress up for a formal interview. The interviewer would expect you to be available on camera. You can't hide behind the you can't blank out your screen. You have to be visible. The interviewer expects to see you, what kind of a person you are, and how much you're prepared you are. So he expects that you are properly dressed, unless it's an organization like an ad agency where they expect you to be very casual. So if you're going for an interview in an ad agency and you go dressed in a tie and crisp shirt and all, you will be the first to get rejected, because they don't want such people who are just complying with the norms. They want rebels, and they want people who come in the weirdest of attire. So, unless you are going for a job with an interview for a at the agency, make sure that you are formally dressed, depending on the kind of organization it is. Okay, if you're going for an interview with a financial institution like a bank or something, it makes sense to wear a tie. If you're going for an interview with a typical marketing organization, maybe an FMCG company, maybe a time is out of place. Okay, so figure out from the organization. As I said, you need to study the organization before you apply for the job. So at that point of time, this is one of the things that you need to understand: what kind of a culture they have, what kind of practices they have, what kind of attire do the people wear. Okay, so dressing up should be as per what the company expects you to dress up. Okay, the other thing is, you have to be on time. You can't afford to be behind time. So let's say you are supposed to be at 3 o'clock for the interview. You need to be there on the video call at 10 minutes to 3, waiting in the waiting room, waiting to get invited into the meeting room. Okay. Uh, you need to obviously have a good network connection. You can't be sitting at the place where the network is pretty feeble. Okay. And your handset, your mobile or laptop, whichever instrument you're using for the meet, should be adequate enough to be able to handle that video call. Okay. You also need to start looking at the camera. You can't be looking here and there, because that does not give a feel of confidence to the interviewer. He feels that this candidate is trying to tell lies, or he's either nervous. One of the two feelings is what the interviewer gets, unless you're looking at the camera itself. Okay. Then, if you're looking at an engineering recruitment, typically, I'm not sure about the pharmacy students. Unfortunately, I don't have too much of experience of recruiting pharmacy students. But if you look at the engineering students, obviously, you will be asked a lot of questions where you will have to draw, you will have to sketch, you'll have to draw block diagrams, etc. So how will you do that activity? Are you going to use a whiteboard of the Zoom call? Are you going to use a Microsoft Draw, or are you going to use some other application, etc.? You need to be ready to be able to sketch and demonstrate to the interviewer what are you talking about, because a lot of work will involve drawing sketches and demonstrating. Okay. A lot of projects also involved writing small programs and applications. Okay. Now, I've typically asked people that if you have written a program, why don't you show me the flowchart for that application? And students are all at sea. They don't know what is the flowchart for that application that they have written. It's a software program they have written, but they don't know what the flowchart is. Okay. So it could be a very basic flowchart which says start, input, decision making, and then go back to start or exit. It could be as simple as that. But then it has to have a flowchart. Okay. Now this simple basic thing is something which students are not aware of. That every program needs to have a flowchart which will help them in future. So how will you draw that flowchart, etc.? You need to be fully prepared for the interview phase, whether it's a whiteboard or whatever it is. Okay. Engineering students typically have a lot of projects at the end of the 8th semester or maybe 7th semester. Okay. Knowledge about that project is something which is expected of the student. You are the one who knows more about the project than the interviewer. The interviewer should be learning from you rather than you trying to learn from the interviewer. Okay. And so you can't have a situation where the interviewer asks some questions about your project and you are not aware of the answer. So project is something, whether you have done that particular project or your partner has done that part of the project, matters little. You are the one more than the interviewer who was there as part of the project. So you need to know your project inside out thoroughly, because that's the only real work life experience that you've got. And employers are very keen to understand that how you have performed in that small work life experience that you had. Okay, so it's necessary that you have a very good understanding of your projects and be prepared to answer all the questions. Okay. The other thing is, if you are talking of a video interview, and if the interviewer is not on camera, it's quite likely that he is taking down some notes, and so his responses may be slightly delayed. So for you at the other end, it may be slightly unnerving. What has happened? Am I making sense? Am I not making sense? Okay, did I say the right thing? Did I not say the right thing? So please wait for the interviewer to come back. Don't just get panicky as to what has happened. The interviewer may be just taking down some notes. Okay. So this is what is typically required in the what you call remote interviews. Okay. Coming to the typical questions, there are a whole lot of typical questions, and you can look up the net to try and figure out what are the questions, how to answer them. But there are certain typical questions where, I would like to draw your attention. First is, there is a typical question about tell me about yourself. Okay. Now, this is not a question which says that, you repeat whatever is there in your resume in a verbal fashion. This is actually an opportunity given to the candidate to sell himself. So this is an opportunity where, in 2 minutes flat, you can tell the interviewer what is great about you with respect to this particular job opening and why he should hire you. Okay, that is what is expected for you, and it should also correlate with what has happened in your life in the past. So it should appear as a logical sequence that, look, I did this, I did this, I did this. Sorry, excuse me. So the answer should be, I did this, I did this, I did this, and hence now it is logical for me to take up this kind of a job so that, I continue on my journey in life. Okay. And this is how a person of my profile will benefit you. So this is what is expected in a typical tell me about yourself question. Okay. Now, what if you don't know the answer? If you don't know the answer, please accept that fact and tell the interviewer honestly that I don't know the answer for whatever reason. Okay. There is no trying to beat around the bush or try to hoodwink the interviewer. Okay. Because the interviewer is also trained how to figure out which candidate is bluffing and which candidate is telling the truth and which candidate is nervous. Okay. So, uh, so all those things one needs to be careful about. And one more typical question is tell me about your weaknesses. So while everyone knows what our strengths are, etc., people are hesitant to talk about the weakness. Okay, what if that weakness goes against me? So the way to answer that question is, number one, everyone has got weaknesses. So it would be telling lies if you are saying that I don't have weaknesses. So the right way to talk about is talk about a weakness and say what steps you are taking to overcome that weakness. So let's say you could say that, I'm a perfectionist. And while it is a good thing to be perfectionist, it also means that, you also start missing your deadlines. Okay. So what I am doing right now is to understand that, while I'm trying to be perfect, I also take a call as to whether I'm 80% to the end point. If I've achieved 80% of the thing and I see where my deadline is, if I'm seeing that I'm very close to my deadline, I just submit my results. I don't wait for the 100% perfection. Okay, this is what I've started doing over the last 3 months, over the last 1 year, or whatever that is. I mean, okay. So talk about a weakness, but also talk about how you are overcoming that weakness. That's important. Okay. The other thing is, people talk about uh, other organizations or other people in a bad manner. So let's say you've got rejected by some other employer in the past. So let's say you got rejected by XYZ company. So the interviewer is bound to ask you, why did you get rejected by that interviewer? Okay. So typical responses, I gave the right answer, but I don't know. Probably they had some other ideas, or they had some other specific candidates in mind, or probably they didn't want to hire from my institute, etc. That is bad mouthing the employer. Okay. Whether what you're saying is the fact or not, the what is expected is that you own up the mistake yourself, even if you were genuinely rejected for some nefarious reasons. Accept the fact that you are not able to convince the employer that you were the best fit for that particular job. You say that I went to the final round and I was one of the two people shortlisted, but probably I think the other person was better and I was not able to make a better impact. Accept that fact. The employer knows, that the interviewer knows, that this guy is willing to own up mistakes and not just keep bad mouthing others. So that's the other thing that is there. And the last important question, people typically ask, if it's a good interviewer, he will typically give an opportunity to ask questions. So he'll say, do you have any questions to ask? Okay. So at that point of time, if you don't have any questions to ask, okay, you look like you have not really prepared. You've just walked into, okay, if I get the job, well and good. If I don't get the job also, it's fine. Okay. So I don't think you need to present that kind of a picture. You need to definitely ask questions. And when you're asking questions, the wrong thing to ask is, what is going to be my salary, what is going to be my what is going to be the working hours, what are the leaves available, etc. That is not the questions. You're only asking about what is it that I'm going to get. What the interviewer is trying to understand is what is he going to get. So you need to understand how can you contribute to the organization. Okay, so ask questions about, how would I get evaluated if I were to be selected for this job? What are the parameters that you would assess for someone who's going to who's going to be successful in this job? What are the typical profiles of, candidates who have been successful and have made a good mark in your organization? Okay, these are the kind of questions that one should ask. So that is all about the interview skills. A whole lot of it is available on the net, so you can always get a lot of those inputs in the what do you call from the net. So just to summarize, what we've done is, we've looked at what is the reality of the Indian marketplace, how jobs are very few and far in between, and how a 1 hour presentation is not something that is going to make you employable. Why it is important for you to focus on employability training per se, why it makes sense for you to start preparing and putting your energies. It's a good 1 semester activity, 1 semester subject that you have to spend on, becoming employable, and you need to put in that effort. It is possible even if you don't have resources. The net is available and a whole lot of free stuff is available. So you can always make use of the net to prepare yourself. Then we looked at how to write the resume, where we said that, a 20-page dossier is what is important, and out of that 20-page dossier, you can pull out whatever is relevant for a particular organization. And then we said you need to network and figure out where the jobs are. The right network will help you get the right kind of leads, that this is where a job opening has come up, and then you need to start preparing the resume for that. Then we looked at what the resume should look like, how crisp and short it should be, and how relevant should it be. And then we looked at the multiple stages of selection, how one will get eliminated at various stages, and how one does not need to get dejected at those various stages, and how one needs to go back to the drawing board to figure out what is it that you need to work on to be able to master that stage. Okay. And then we looked at how to handle the remote interviews, and then we looked at some of the typical questions and what are the typical precautions to take when you're talking of answering those questions. So that's all I have to cover from my side. So I am open to answering any questions that are there.
Yes, thank you very much
My
for
pleasure.
your precious time. And right now, sir, we have a personal question from participant. He is
Okay.
asking that, sir, can we cover the salary package? Can we ask the salary package increment in a organization?
Yeah. Okay. So if you look at a typical organization, most organizations will want to keep that activity at the fag end. Okay. So they will. This is a typical question that interviewers ask. What is our salary expectations? Okay, and we immediately blurt out that, this is what I'm expecting. Okay. Now, more refined response would be to, let us first answer. Let us first. We'll come to that question when when we are at it. At this point of time, let's figure out whether I'm the right profile for your organization. So that you need to avoid that question at the initial stages. Now, in the final stages, let's say you are there among the two shortlisted candidates, and you are asked that question: what is your salary expectations? So it is never a good idea to quote your figure. It may so happen that you are quoting a very low figure, or it may so happen that you are quoting a very high figure. If you are quoting a very high figure, obviously the interviewer may feel that if he doesn't meet your expectations, this guy may probably not join, or he may not stay for long. If you quote a very low figure, he will get away scot-free. You will get a very low salary. Okay, because that's what you asked for, and he would give you that readily. So it's always not a good idea to quote your salary expectations. You can always say, I will appreciate if you could share, if you could make your best offer, and we can always discuss that aspect. A good employer will always give his offer first. He will not insist. Once he realizes that the candidate is not willing to give the first quote, he will just keep quiet. He will not push you further. Now, if he's still pushing you further, you need to take a call as to whether you want to work for that employer who's trying to, drive a hard bargain with you without disclosing what the real worth of that job is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. The question you have answered it very well. And sir, the last question from a participant is, so what to mention in a CV of a fresher? How can a fresher mention what to mention in a CV of a fresher? What a fresher can mention in his CV?
Yeah. So, as I said, the CV is about skills and what is it that you have achieved. Okay. Your achievements are not just at the workplace, your achievements are there throughout your life. Okay. And so you need to, that's the reason why I said that you have a 20-page dossier on yourself. In that 20-page dossier, you will have what have you achieved in life, what you have not achieved in life, how have you tackled those failures. All those things will be available. Those will give you a good insight into how to not only write your resume, but also how to answer your interview questions. Okay. So obviously, uh, what to write exactly in the resume, etc., is, I think, this is too short a time for us to answer that question. But I'm saying the skills is not only at the workplace. Skills are also, like, for example, if you've led your football team, okay, you can talk about that. If you did not lead the team, but you were just a player in that football team, you can talk about that. You could talk about anything else that where you showed initiative. Okay, you could talk of so many things. If you've come into this organization, into your institution, obviously you've come through after a lot of struggle. So obviously there's a lot in it for that exists. It's just that you are not aware, and that is the reason why we have this 20-page dossier which tells you what is it that you have achieved, what is it that you have not achieved. Okay, but if you look up the internet, obviously there's a whole lot of detailed amount of information available as to what a fresher can write, because you're not the only fresher who's going to apply for a job. There are thousands of freshers, and all of them, and yet some of them still do get through without any experience. So how to make use of that skills in your life, and how to present them as skills which are worth picking up even for the workplace, is what you need to present. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got your answer pretty well. And sir, thank you very much for your precious time. Now, I think there's one more question
Sure,
from
please
an
go ahead.
anonymous attendee. How should I answer as a fresher if the interviewers ask me why do you want to join our organization and how can you help in its growth?
Yeah. So this is where your background study of the organization comes into picture. What the candidate, what the interviewer is actually trying to understand is, have you done your background homework? Have you studied what our organization is all about? Okay. What are the problems that it is facing? Are you reading the newspapers and trying to understand what this organization is going through? Okay. What is it that you can do? What is it that you cannot do? Okay, that is what it is. Now if you know somebody in that organization, you can also talk to that person beforehand. This is obviously before the interview. You need to go across and meet up with the those people, and try and figure out from them what is it that they are incidentally. If you know, if they know who the interviewer is going to be, those people can put in a word to the interviewer that, look, so and so person whom I know is a good candidate, you may want to look at him more favorably. Okay, without trying to influence too much. But on your part, you cannot disclose that you know this person in your job, in the what you call organization. Okay, so how can you this thing? So let's say as a fresher, you are in the sales, what you call you are in the pharmaceutical industry field, and you're getting into sales. So as a fresher, what happens is people are typically looking for medical representatives, and they want to have freshers because freshers have got a lot of enthusiasm. If you look at people with 5 to 6 years experience, they have lost a lot of enthusiasm. They are not interested in doing cold calls. They do not want to go about trying to meet unknown faces and face rejections. Whereas a newcomer, fresh from college graduate, he has to prove himself. So he is more keen to demonstrate to his superiors that, look, I am adding value. I've got a new customer. I've got this new doctor who set up his practice recently, and I've managed to convert him to our fold. Okay, so a newcomer can actually show his enthusiasm. If the pharmaceutical industry, he can say that, look, I can do a lot of work where people, the experienced guys, are reluctant to work. I can take up those kind of challenges because for me, failure is nothing very great. It's not too. If I fail, it's nothing too serious a matter. If those seniors fail, it's obviously going to impinge their confidence. But for me, it's not so difficult a phase, especially with people like you around to support me. Okay. So, is it making sense?
Yes, sir. We got your answer on that. And so one last question
Now, actually, I
remaining.
can see two more questions in the Q and
Yes.
in the window. So the first thing is, this job is helpful in pharmaceutical field. So I presume it is the same person who was talking about the previous question. So
Yes.
if it is the same, then I'm not repeating. But if it is not the same, maybe if it is a different kind of a thing, then obviously the same kind of answer would think. Maybe if it's not a sales kind of thing, let's say if it's an engineering industry. So one could always talk about the fact that I have a lot more time available at my disposal. I'm not married. I have a lot more time at my disposal. I can do a lot of work. In R&D, I can do a lot of work in serving the customer or whatever that is. Okay, so that freedom is an advantage which a lot of married people will not be able to do, and a lot of freshers from college will have that advantage. Okay, so figure out what is it that you have as an advantage rather than those experienced people, and I'm sure everyone, each one of you will be able to figure out your opportunities and make a mark of it. Then there is one question in an interview: how would you react if you don't know the answer to a question? Okay, so if you don't know the answer to a question, the first thing is, obviously, you will try to figure out what is the right answer. Okay, if you still are not able to figure out, it makes sense to be honest and upfront and say that, look, sorry, I don't have the answer to this. I have probably forgotten, or probably I have skipped it. Now, there will be some interviewers who are more willing to help you. Okay, in the sense that they are not there to understand from you the right answer. They are trying to figure out how your approach is to solve a problem. They are not interested in whether you solve the problem or not, but they are more interested in whether you are willing to solve a problem or not. So in that case, they will keep giving you small kinds of bits and pieces. They will keep giving you hints, and based on those hints, are you able to move forward? Okay, are you willing to take the risk? Okay, you could always qualify your answer. Okay, look, this is what I feel, but I could be wrong. So the person at the other on the other side knows that, yes, this guy is willing to take a risk, but he also is willing to accept that he could be wrong. So it could be a case of trying to understand your problem solving capabilities rather than whether you are answering whether you know the subject or not. So everything is not about the subject. A lot of interviews are about understanding you as a person, not about what you know about the subject.
So, yes, got your answer, sir. And now we'll end up the session here, sir.
Okay,
Thank you very
so
much, sir, for your precious time and for the effort you bring up for this session. and we hope to see such informative sessions from you ahead. And till then, sir, thank you very much, and take care. Allah Hafiz.
Yeah. My I would like to thank Association of Muslim Professionals also, as well as JKM College of Engineering, as well as uh, Institute of Pharmacy Amritsar, for taking the time out to understand the issues and help the students. Big thank you to all the students also who patiently borne with me, and I hope I've been able to initiate some kind of a fire in you to take up the cudgels and start working on your employability skills. So thank you all of you once again, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.